All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Track versus Track. Matt Jensen here, along with my co-captain, Jacob Rosdale. Hopefully you guys saw episode 1 where we took Paul and Linda McCartney's Ram and ranked our least favorite to favorite tracks. So this is our second one.
Yeah.
And I think we have a real doozy here today, Jacob.
This one's tough. This was tough. And you picked this one. This isn't your favorite Kinks album though?
It wasn't going into this, but we kind of had to pull an audible about 3 days ago because we were going to do something else, and stay tuned.
Will. Yeah.
But we had just a couple days to listen to this, and I have known this was actually the album that really got me into the Kinks. I knew the singles and stuff like that, but when somebody said, are you familiar with Village Green Preservation Society? And I had never heard of it even. I mean, I knew You Really Got Me. I knew I'm So Tired. I knew
Lola,
All Day and All the Night, but this was like the first one I really got into. And actually, this is my original CD that I probably got sometime in like 99, 2000. And they've done a bunch of remasters since then, but I kind of shelved it, honestly. And so, yeah, when discussing this, it wasn't the one that I put as my even top 3 favorites, but things may have changed because I've listened to it like 10 times in the last 3 days.
I've listened to it a lot as well, and it's a hard album to rank. And maybe you will disagree with me. The first time I listened to it, I'm like, okay, there's probably like 3 too many songs or something like that. And then I did a little research, and apparently it was a 12 album track, and then they added 3 songs, but they also got rid of 2 songs. And yeah, you have the box set. You probably have like the European version in there.
That's the original 12 track.
Wow.
With Days.
Yeah, it's got Days and Mr. Songbird on there.
Yep.
And I think the perfect version of this album probably is a combination of the 2. That would be a whole other thing, building our own perfect Village Green Preservation Society track list. But that's not what we're doing. We're just ranking what's on the US 15 tracks, correct?
That is correct. That's exactly what I ranked. And I was telling you right before we went live here that I had this meticulous sheet that I even wrote little notes and stuff, talking points. And in my haste of getting here back to my home base on time, I left it on my desk. So,
well, at least you have a prop. I'm just going off of.
Have to go from the heart, man.
All right. Well, like I said, I listening to it at first, I was like, there's a few too many tracks because it starts to bleed together. But the more you listen to it, each track kind of has its own, even though at first you're like, oh, it's all very happy and folky and whatever. There's varieties in here. And the bottom 2 of my list aren't necessarily the ones I would cut in a perfect track listing. But my number 15 is Phenomenal Cat, which is a song that I just think none of these tracks are bad. But if I had to put one at the bottom, this one just sounds kind of like a demo that they were making up as they went along. And even to the point where there's a lot of la and da-da-da-da-das throughout the album, but mid lyric, it just seems to go into da-da-das. And they also have the laughing gnome voice from that David Bowie song. So that's why that one is my bottom track.
I think that one actually that one moved around the most today when I was finalizing my rankings, and it actually ended up a little higher on my list than yours, but it was towards the bottom of mine. So if memory serves, I believe my number 15 is Monica. It has kind of a calypso flavor to it. Da, 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 da. I don't mind it. There's not a single song on here that I would skip, and they all really flow nicely into each other. The second half, in my opinion, though, has the weaker songs than side 1.
Oh, for real.
For whatever reason, this and 2 other ones I could have put at number 15. I just went with this one. It's probably the song that I'm least familiar with too, and it's the penultimate track, which we talked about in Ram. Generally speaking, for me, and I think a lot of like producers and stuff, when they sequence the albums, they put the weakest song as the second to last. However, I don't think that there's a real banger here to close out the album. There's no backseat of my car, but so it's kind of obla-dee, obla-da-ish to me. And
Monica was one of the songs, like every time if you were to ask me like to sing Monica, I'd have to be, okay, let me play for a little bit of it. And then I listened to it and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a good song. But Money for Moonshine is the only part of it that kind of sticks out. So it's near the bottom, but my actual 14 is All of My Friends Were There, which again is I think is a good song, but the only really good part is where it kind of goes, "Oh my friends," and then the rest of it's totally forgettable. So that's why it's 14, and I might as well say Monica's my 13, because those are just tracks where I had to like kind of remind myself, oh, how'd this one go, and then play it.
Well, I'll do 14 and 13 back to back as well. And that's funny that you said, because that was one of my talking points for all of my friends were there. It's like, what a killer chorus, but the verses leading into it, they're kind of forgettable for sure. My number 14, excuse me, is number 15. People take pictures of each other. And for whatever reason, it's and for whatever reason, this song reminds me of Starstruck a little bit, but just not, it doesn't do it as well. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Sitting by the Riverside. They're just kind of like these little pastiches of like, I don't know, like song and dance man type of stuff. I don't hate it, but just, and to be honest with you, if I had the sheet in front of me, it may have been a little higher, but like I said, I'm going off of my memory here. So my number 13 is Sitting by the Riverside, which closes out side one. The Kinks are so very British. They paint these just very vivid pictures of British life, and Sitting by the Riverside is just, well, the Kinks, weren't allowed to play in America for a couple of years because of some issues. And so they wanted to be like overly British as like kind of reaction to that. And I would call that them ditties. That song, people take pictures of each other, there's another song about pictures, which is a far greater song. And Sitting by the Riverside kind of has that like Queen strolling on a Sunday afternoon type of feel to it. And they're totally inoffensive and lovely little pieces, but they're not up to par with some of the great songs on here. So those are my 14 and 13.
Yeah, my 12 is actually Sitting by the Riverside, because again, I think in the context of the album, it's just like, okay, another little ditty. It just, on its own, good song, but in the context of, and it is a concept album, it's all about nostalgia and Britishisms, I don't know what you call them. Right. I do like how that track gets kind of cacophonous at a point, but because there's no, like, whoever produced it, I didn't even look, it's no George Martin though, it doesn't work as well. And this came out the same day even as the White Album, if I remember right. So just to give you context of where those two bands were at the same time, they were trying some of that stuff. It just wasn't as executed as well on the production side. And they just were never as tight musically as the Beatles. So yeah, Sitting by the Riverside, another one I would have to be like, how'd that one go? Oh yeah, Sitting by the Riverside. What's your number 12, Matt?
You make a really good point though. The Beatles had a guy by the name of George Martin, whereas Ray Davies actually, or Davis as I think they pronounce it. Americans always
I've been saying it wrong the last 20 years.
You hear English people say Davies too on YouTube channels and stuff like that. But occasionally one of them will correct and be like, it's actually Davis. But he produced the album, so it's like he didn't have that extra set of ears to fine tune. And they probably didn't have, obviously they didn't have the budget that the Beatles did too. But yeah, I like that little trippy part of Sitting by the Riverside. I forgot to say that. I do. That's my favorite part of it actually. So my number 12 is gosh. This is where I was having issues. This is where I kept moving things around, and without this paper here, it's kind of throwing me off.
Your gut.
So we're gonna go Phenomenal Cat.
Okay.
I love the introduction though with the flutes, the multiple or recorders or whatever. It kind of sounds like a cartoon show. And it's very T.S. Eliot, esque. When you think of T.S. Eliot, you think of that crappy Andrew Lloyd Webber musical about cats. You could definitely tell like this was definitely, the lyrics were inspired by like a poem by T.S. Eliot.
Mm.
And it's
he rhymes cat with fat, so that's where I was like, I can go.
And it's poor lyric writing, and I hate the gnome. Effect they have in the voice, but I do kind of like the dreamy, kind of acidy, feeling to it. It's kind of moments like in Sitting by the Riverside. It's one of the more psychedelic songs. This album, it actually really isn't that psychedelic at all. I don't think.
Now, I think there's one or two parts where, you could call it psychedelic. It is, okay, what's your 11? You already mentioned it. Is People Take Pictures. There's already another song about pictures. It's a fine song on song. Should have been a B-side or something, except about why we have photos and nostalgia, all that. You don't need to.
Exactly. That's pretty, we've actually kind of started, even though not quite in the same order, we've been kind of on the same page more or less with where we're ranking these songs.
Especially with just the first half and then the second half of the album, honestly.
And I was surprised too, because there's such a variety to this. I didn't know that we'd necessarily be on the same page with it. All right. So my next one is, it's Starstruck, and I do enjoy it. And honestly, this one might have been my 10 or 9 if from whenever I finalize my list. I'm gonna stop going back to that point, because obviously I forgot the list, and it's gonna be annoying if I keep hearing myself say that every time. I like parts of Starstruck. I don't really care for the chorus, the Starstruck, da, 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 but there's parts of the song that I do like, and I really like everything now at this point quite a bit. So it's nitpicky, and don't really have a whole lot more to say about it, but that's my number 11, just because I like 10 songs better.
Yeah, the next 10 songs I think are pretty great. The one I think is the least great of those 10 is probably Last of the Steam Powered Trains. It's a good song. Again, a late addition to the album, by my research is right, which I'm not sure it is. It's Wikipedia. Just another track about being nostalgic and being the last of your kind. Sounds a little bit like, there's another song that's even more Who-like, but I know you're a big Who fan, bigger Who fan than I am. But I'm like, this kind of sounds Who-ish, if we're comparing contemporaries now.
Well, I mean, Kinks and the Who are often kind of compared, just generally speaking, because they have that mod,
Oh.
And then they
went concept albums too.
A lot of concept albums, exactly. I always thought it was weird when people compared Led Zeppelin with the Who, because it's Beatles and Stones, or Led Zeppelin, the Who. Which do you prefer? I'm like, those two bands are totally different to me. I know early Who has like blues influence stuff, but I see more similarities with the Kinks with the Who. All right, so my number 10 is All of My Friends Were There. And you're making a lot of my points for me before I have a chance to say it, which is great. But
you're the musician. You should be.
I should be throwing in like theory words and stuff like that. The verses, not really into it. The chorus is great though. That when it slows down into that waltz time, that 3/4. All of my friends were 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But yeah, leading into the verses, leading into the chorus, it's not very memorable. So yeah, that's my number 10. And yeah, now we're getting into some excellent songs, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of overlap. I'll just be curious of order here. My number 9 is Big Sky, which is one that I had lower and then kept moving up every time I'd listen to it, because at first I wasn't kind of crazy about the talking Big Sky, looked at the people looking up at the big sky, and then when it gets into the chorus, it's a pretty great song.
Well, yeah, it's got two definite like movements to it, where you have that ding 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 big sky, and then you've got the kind of like, I guess, the B theme or the chorus, which I love. I don't care as much about the talking part either. And this song, I've through research too, or watching just other people's opinions of songs on this album, they love this song, and I'm glad you put it there, because I'm not too far off from you. My number 9 has got to be Wicked Annabella, and honestly, I love the introduction to this, dan, 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 and I love the vocal effect. Din, 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 din. I mean, it's basically about what, an evil like witch or something, right?
The witchy song, yeah.
Yeah, and I really like it. It adds total variety. I mean, it's one of the most diverse songs on this album, because this album is pretty optimistic, and songs are set in like a major key, whereas this is kind of that murky minor, and it really adds a nice taste of variety to the album. But it's not the most melodic song in the world, but it's just cool. It's a perfect album cut. So yeah, that's my number 9, Wicked Annabella.
8 for me is Animal Farm, which I think has some of that psychedelic stuff in it, and it doesn't have like a strong chorus like lyrically, but that's the Animal Farm, and it's another song that every time I listen to it, I like it more.
Well, it's my number 8 too.
Okay.
And I think this is like definition of like Baroque pop. You got the harpsichord, and you've got the string quartet, or you got classically based instruments in there. It reminds me a lot of, speaking of the White Album, Piggies, which is a George Harrison song, which has kind of that Baroque classicism to it. So, I don't really have actually not that much to say about it, but I'll go right into my number 7 and we can kind of flip spots.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's flip the script.
All right. So we're kind of at the halfway point right now, aren't we? My number 7 is Big Sky. And like we talked about, don't love the talking part, the rap. This is early rap, right? Don't love the talking part, but there's a great kind of flow to it. This is probably the most. Would you say this is probably the most psychedelic of the group of songs?
Yeah, probably.
It's really existential too, lyrically. Like
what is Big Sky? Is it a person? Is it the big sky?
Yeah.
Or is it the God? Yeah.
Exactly.
God, yeah.
Big Sky.
My 7 is Village Green, not Village Green Preservation Society. It's a little too happy, but if you're gonna have two songs that are basically called the same, they sound different enough.
I think it shares a lot in common with Animal Farm. They kind of go, I think they have kind of a similar instrumentation. They both have like these very chamber orchestra, and then there's like the English horn that does that little counter melody. We'll hear more about that later from me. Village Green.
Wow.
I
What's
guess
your number 6?
Number 6. Oh boy, this is tough. So I think I've ruled out everything on side 2, save Village Green, and then I pretty much have everything on side 1 except for Sitting by the Riverside and Big Sky. So I guess this is the time I say Last of the Steam Powered Trains. It's a blues song, so it's not overly complicated, but you know that part at the end when it goes and it does like that chromatic workup. Boom, bam, bam, I just love how that builds so much energy, just like that train coming down the tracks of the stage. And it's a kick-ass song. And I've heard some amazing covers of this song too, which have just like built my appreciation for it. But yeah, the quarterly, structurally, this is probably about as simple as any song on the album. But there's just some kind of kick-ass energy to it that I just love. So that could even go a little higher for me depending on the mood I'm in, but that one's my number 6.
I've got a rocker for my number 6. It's Johnny Thunder.
Yeah.
Which, as a New York Dolls fan, like, of course I was drawn to that track. Someone adopted that name. Again, this is the one that I think is very Who-like, more so than the bluesy steam powered trains. If I were to try and sing Johnny Thunder, eventually I would start singing parts of Tommy and how he doesn't know what day it is, because it's very much the very similar kind of cadence. And I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't look at the timeline. I'm pretty sure this is pre-Tommy. So
Tommy's 69, this is 67.
Yeah, but it's very similar. And I'm a fan of Tommy. So when I heard that, I was like, it's very much like from that album.
Wow, you hit the nail on the head. It always reminded me of something and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and Tommy doesn't know his name or whatever, but that part in Johnny Thunder for sure. And we're on the same page here. Johnny Thunder is my next one as well. Thunder and lightning. Yeah, I just love it. I love the bridge. I love the chorus. I love the verse. Johnny Thunder paints such a picture of this. What he's like this
cool dude.
And kind of a ruffian, kind of sort of like a Fonz, right?
So I'm going to go with the title track here, which it was the one that got stuck in my head the most over the past few days, but that's because it's the name of the album. And I'd be like, oh, time to listen to Village Green Preservation Society. The only reason it's probably not as high as it could be, don't get me wrong, I like Donald Duck, vaudeville and variety. I just lyrically, and I think it's a little too conservative. I don't think it's not tongue in cheek. I think it's meant to be taken at face value, that we should value these old things and not the modern stuff. And that's kind of the opposite of what rock and roll is about. So as catchy of a track it is. And I'm like, first I'm like, oh, he's sarcastic. But the more you listen to the album, you're like, I don't think he was sarcastic. That was the mission statement of the record at that very first song. So as much as I like the song, there's just a little sticking in my craw about the content, lyrical content, maybe. Also, he rhymes variety with variety. when he starts talking about strawberry jam.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was enough to keep it down at number 5.
Man, I really appreciate that you are able to spend a little bit more attention and dissect the lyrics, because I'm not as much of a lyric guy as you, and it's not as offensive to me like when the lyrics are bad, but I appreciate your insight on that, because that's something that I can't really bring to the table. Man, that's my next song too, Village Green Preservation Society. And that was the song that hooked me into the album, though, because it is a great first track. And I don't think the first track should be the strongest track on the album, because then it just goes downhill from there. But I think it gives you enough of what's to come later in the album. Yeah, I've always thought the lyrics were kind of fun, actually. The Fu Manchu and Moriarty,
yeah.
Dastardly Dan, or some other just British characters. And I kind of like that about it. The production on this song, though, for whatever reason, and it could be if I'm listening to it on vinyl or like a remastered edition or just it sounds kind of muddy to me.
A lot of the record sounded muddy. I was listening to the 2018 remaster. And they were probably just doing what they could with the source material, clearly with the remaster, but yeah.
And maybe you just kind of get used to that production after the first song. So it seems like an improvement, but really it isn't. And yeah, but for whatever reason, that song just sounds like it was produced like on Casio equipment or something like that. Just really cheap microphones from Radio Shack or something like that. But that's my number 4.
Yeah, my number 4, you talked about it already, was Wicked Annabella, which maybe I'm over rating because of that bass line, like how cool it is. And I am a fan of the Stadium Rock era Kinks.
Me too.
And this is probably the closest to that on this album. Maybe Steam Powered Trains gets, there's some tracks later like that. But and as you meant, I was talking about how samey the record can be if listened to as a whole, and that breaks it up. And it's a song about a witch when everything else is about dogs and cats and cool dudes and strawberry jam. It was good to get a witchy woman in there. Now we're getting to the top 3.
All right.
Very suspenseful.
Well, I think I think these 3 were my top 3 when I ranked it earlier, so I feel pretty comfortable that this is how it went. So number 3 for me is Village Green. And what I like about Animal Farm, that I called it like Baroque sensibilities, the harpsichord and stuff like that. Village Green has even more. It's got the English horn. It's got, it's actually, you commented saying it was kind of a happy song. See, for me, it's like the other minor song. It's set kind of in a, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of playing Tetris, that kind of the I don't know, I get kind of that same minor. It's very melodic, but has kind of a set to kind of a minor. There's some flats in there for sure.
This is hard to think of a la 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 as being sad, but I think you're right. It is a minor key. So
yeah, and I love the bridge. I love the village green, da 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 da, the church, the steeple, da 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 da, da, and then it recapitulates back into that dan 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 dan. See, I don't even know the words as well as you.
It sounds like something you would see in a period piece when they come across a festival. Absolutely. And there's people dancing around the maypole.
You got it.
It's the imagery that maybe that again makes me think it's a happier song than it is actually melodically. My number 3 clearly is either your number 2 or your number 1. I'm thinking probably your number 2 is Do You Remember Walter, which is a funny song, I think. And it's about nostalgia, but also about, well, if I did talk to this guy, he's probably different than what he used to be. And the opening, ELO owes a lot to the Davies, because ELO built their whole career on the and that's how Do You Remember Walter starts.
I think it's crazy though how we landed on these as our top 2, because I don't think, from talking with other people and just other things I've read, that people think these are solid tracks. We're talking about track 2 and track 3 on the album, but I don't think people necessarily put them in the top 5. I think they're kind of like in that 6-7 spot, but they're my favorites as well. And I have Picture Book as 2. I just love
Picture Book's my number 2.
Pop! Picture yourself when you're getting older. Yeah. And the great chorus, the Picture Book. And you could just you know, they're talking about drinking your mom and dad with your aunt and uncle drinking beers on a Sunday afternoon and just strolling through memory lane as I mean, lyrically, it's, I think, maybe number one. But the one you just talked about will be my number one. I'll get a little bit into that in a second, but I love Picture Book. It could be my favorite. It's a perfect song, and I've got no complaints about it.
Yeah, I think the only reason Picture Book is not my number one is it felt because it was in that ad, that HP printer ad. And so then it's like it's me trying to be the cool kid. It's like, oh, that can't be the best song because that's the one people know from the album now. I think it was also
you have two left still. You have two left. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So Picture Book's my number two. I am a fan of the Pixies, so it also has that "Here Comes Your Man." Like, I'm sorry to always be comparing it to other things. I don't speak music like you, so I have to use analogs. But yeah, it's a great song. It was the one I'd play to people, and they would be like, "Oh, that's awesome. Who is that?" "Oh, the Kinks." That's never happened, but it could happen. I've been listening to it on my speakers at work, hoping people would be coming in and be like, "Who is that?" It didn't happen. So your number one must be, do you remember Walter then?
Remember Walter. And, you know, I told you earlier that I'm not a lyric guy so much, but for whatever reason, the lyrics in this song like hit me in the cockles of my heart, man. Like, it is so nostalgic because, you know, I'm at this age now, we're at this age, you know, where we've turned 40 or getting close to, and you think back sometimes after a few beers, and you think back to like the forts that you made with these, you know, neighborhood friends of yours, and we've all changed so much, you know, visually, facially, and whatnot. And if you were to run into them again, would they have those same fond memories like you, or would they just be like, oh yeah, that guy, I remember him, but that's all they have like sustained in their heart or maintained in their heart is just your name. And for whatever reason, yeah, you know, this great, it was like his best friend, Walter, you know, they did all this great stuff together. And then like 20 years go by, 30 years go by. It's like, you're nothing to this person anymore. You're just kind of this name that was from your past. And I just, do you, which it goes between minor and major there. And Walter was his name. Ding 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 ding. There's just so much musically going on.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
I don't really describe it all like in theoretical terms, but it's just there's so much in the lyrics, there's so much in the music, and I would have never in a million years until doing this exercise, Jacob, would I have said that was my favorite song. I've always liked it. I've always really liked it. But it never was like, this strikes me as like the masterpiece of the album, but it's my favorite. And it may not be the masterpiece, but it's my favorite. And I think it's my favorite by a margin.
Yeah. So my number one is Starstruck. And there's just something about it that resonated. I liked it. It reminded me a lot of, we talked about this with Ram, where there's like one track where I'm like, I bet this band heard this song and inspired their entire career. And with me, it's Starstruck and probably Vampire Weekend. There's no way Elijah Koenig, or whatever his name is, didn't hear this song and then be like, okay, that's my band. And they're a band I like quite a bit. So, and again, the lyrics are also opposite of kind of what it's about. It's about going out to the world and being won over. I mean, not it's a cautionary tale, of course, about being won over by fame and beer and booze and whatnot. And you know, the chorus is maybe a little shaggy, but it's one of probably like where I like the harmonizing the best in it. Just them all, it just sounds like a nice party track to me. I can't say it's the best song on there, but it's the one that I listened to the most over the past few days.
And it was the first single, wasn't it?
It was, and I think but what was the B-side? Because I remember seeing that and then being like,
I think Picture Book.
Yeah,
was the
which would be the opposite of what I would have assumed. I would have assumed Picture Book was the single. And are there singles in that book?
There are, yeah. And I will. Oh. Well, and then, you know, honestly, and I told you this off the camera, but my favorite song that was recorded during these sessions would be. Yeah. It was on the
European version.
European version. But
would that be the number one then?
That'd be my number one, yeah.
Yeah. It would be in my top five, easy.
Starstruck.
Oh yeah, Starstruck's first.
And then we've got Village Green Preservation Society with Do You Remember Walter is the B-side.
Days would be in my top 5. I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Songbird, which is the song on the European 12. Oh, wow. CDs.
Digest here. Yeah, 5 CDs
Yeah.
as well as those 45s, then a 3 LP set.
I wish I had that sweet disposable income. But great album though. It's still not my favorite Kinks album. Maybe we'll get to that at some point. And I'd like to do your favorite Kinks album, the Hillbillies. Yeah.
Well,
Muswell.
There's kind of 2 that posture for that position. Arthur and then Muswell Hillbillies. But yeah, typically Muswell Hillbillies is made more of a contrarian choice. Because I think Arthur and Village Green, a lot of people are like, those are kind of sister albums, you know, they were just released a year apart and they're very similar. That's more of Australian life and fighting during World War I and stuff like that. But
I'm down for that. I'm down for any British invasion tracks you want to pick out or albums you want to pick out. I would love to do a Stones. The Who I'm not as familiar with as you. I mostly know them from compilations and stuff, so I would love to do a deep dive in a Who album too. People want to vote or tell us what to do.
Put in the comments below. And actually, thanks for that. I should probably plug, hey, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, go ahead and do that and hit that little notification bell in the corner so you get notified anytime we do another track versus track. I'll be posting this on my Facebook as well, so you can access it through that. And comment one of your favorite songs. You can do all 15 and rank them if you want, or just, you know, put maybe your top 5 favorites. Jay,